Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Claudine Russell, the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anybody else be recording the meeting? I ask just so that people at the meeting will know if this is happening, and I look to Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Chairman. I reserve my right.
Lovely, thank you. If the fire alarm sounds, please remain seated. Members of Democratic Services will assist and will give you further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Just before we get on to the items on the agenda, I'm going to switch it round a little bit. So I'm going to put item 15, which is our work programming report, at the end of the agenda, and I think that will save some of the officers and visiting members some time, because I think we're obviously going to talk quite in depth about what we want to do as a committee, and I don't think you need to hang around through all of that. So I hope that's agreed, everybody? Lovely, thank you. That brings us to item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies? Can't see anybody.
Joe Hickson.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Hickson. And have we got any substitute members, item 2? No substitutes. We don't have any urgent items this evening, but we have got 4 additional work scopes that have been submitted that will be added to that item 15 at the end, the work programming report. So I intend to take these as urgent updates, and they've all been published online and circulated, so you should have seen them, but I'm happy to give us 5 minutes when we get to that end item to quickly have a read through if the committee thinks that that's what they need. So is that agreed? Lovely, thank you. Item 4, I can't see any visiting members. Item 5, are there any disclosures by members or officers? Can't see anybody indicating. Welcome, Councillor Wilkinson. You're not indicating either, are you? No. Item 6, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Again, I can't see anybody indicating. That moves us on to item 7, and I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 8 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of April, and also I might as well do these two together. We've got the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of May, which was the really short snap committee. So I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of April and the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of May be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. We don't have any petitions this evening, and item 11, we don't have any questions from local residents. Item 12, we don't have any questions from members to the chairman, which takes us to item 13, which is the Cabinet Forward Plan. You'll find that on pages 5 to 17 of your agenda packs. Before we have a look at this forward plan, there has been a couple of changes that have been made since this agenda was published. So the Kent Farmer and Food Market item has been removed. We've got other items that have been included, such as a community grants policy, a property acquisition, property disposal policy, resilient communities, voluntary community services grant scheme, and some conservation appraisals for Boxley, East Farley and Lewes Valley. And we've got some emerging proposals for a new local plan. The topic of property disposal was discussed as a potential review topic when we had our workshop, in the work programming workshop, and the decision for this, the cabinet decision for this, is scheduled to be made in July. So rather than put this forward as a scope, what we've decided is that I asked the committee to decide if you want to bring that to us as a pre-decision scrutiny item. Thoughts? Yes. Yeah, look, everyone's nodding, so I take it that that's agreed? Lovely, thank you. Any other comments on the forward plan? Councillor Wilkinson.
I was pleased to see that the local bus focus group was going to be discussed because I've been waiting for that to come through from the JTB over a year ago. So I'd really like that to be highlighted in the committee.
Is that something that you were thinking you would bring here as a pre-decision scrutiny, or you just welcome that that's on the forward plan and you'll look for it through the packs and let us know as overview and scrutiny if we need to?
Pre-decision scrutiny.
See Councillor English indicating.
I'm meeting with Tom Gilbert, the officer who facilitates the bus users group, and we will be formulating the update report tomorrow. So it will be available for members of this committee in the near future. And it was intended that you would get a report once 2 meetings had taken place.
Bear with me, I'm just checking because the date of the decision is the 23rd of July on that one, so I'm just going to check whether we're okay time-wise for a pre-decision scrutiny, bearing in mind what Councillor English said. Just bear with me for a second. Yes, there is room in the programme for that. We could bring it to the 15th of July overview and scrutiny meeting, and then we could feed back verbally to the Cabinet before they take their decision on the 23rd of July. So that we can do that. So I've got a proposer for that. Councillor English?
It's not a decision as such, it's an update report. So there's no particular need to bring it forward unless you actually want to. So just mention that. There may be some decisions coming down the track, but at this stage, in fact there will be, but at this stage there's no time pressure.
So in light of that, if it's just an update, I don't see that there's value at pre-decision scrutiny at this stage. No, thank you. Thank you for that explanation, Councillor English. Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of trying to decide items we might wish to call in for pre-decision scrutiny, I think we're disadvantaged, and hopefully it will be clear in the July cycle in terms of only having a forward plan literally going one cycle ahead, because it means that half the time there isn't time to call something in, or, because we're just not being given the feel for what's coming up over the next 2 to 3 months. Whereas if the forward plan covered a slightly longer period, it would make it a lot easier, I think, for us to consider whether any item should be called in for pre-decision scrutiny, and also the sort of volumes we might wish to do. But as it is, only having like one cycle ahead of where we are tonight just makes it quite difficult.
Thank you. I guess a way forward on that is that we could ask the Cabinet if they would be minded to give us a further ahead forward plan. I take your point that it's May to August, so it's obviously a 4-month period, but the time we look at it in overview and scrutiny, we're sort of midway through June, so I do get that when we're talking about pre-decision scrutiny. But equally, I don't know how far ahead things go onto the forward plan, so it could be something we could ask and see if they would be able to accommodate us on that. What does anyone else think on that as a suggestion? Councillor Cook?
Just a question, Madam Chairman. I think all of the committees, and I'm sure Cabinet's the same, has a work programme, and the work programme is going to set out, not just on a quarter by quarter basis. Surely that looks further into the future. So why can't we just look at the have a copy of the Cabinet's work programme made available to this committee, and we can look at it from there. And if there are items that are on the Cabinet's work programme, if Clive can illuminate us on that, that would be may be helpful. But that might be a way forward. I'm just trying to be helpful.
We can do that. The only slight downside is that you may have to be a little indulgent, because it may change slightly if we give you a longer time frame, because things do move about because of events and priorities and information being available. So we can give you a longer range shot, but it may not be the final version. So as long as you're okay with that.
Thank you, Councillor English. I was going to say I think it would be subject to change as it went further on into the future, but so yeah, don't jump in. Councillor Cook.
Can I thank Councillor English for that? I mean, that's helpful. And I think if we could make a note of that, if the officers would make a note of that as an offer from the deputy leader, which I believe that we as a committee should willingly say thank you, and note the caveat that goes with that. If there are changes as we go along, we need to work with cabinet on that as well. So I think that's a real positive step forward.
Thank you, and I think it's helped Councillor English being here because we don't need to do that two-step process. We've asked for it tonight. He's here. He said they're happy to look at it. I think provided that we obviously go forward with that caveat that things that are in the distant future will be subject to change, that would be great if we can get a longer forward work programme. So,
and I will check as chairman of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee whether there are any contingent changes we need to make to facilitate that.
lovely, thank you. So have we got that down as a proposal? Okay, so just so that we get this on the minutes, so we proposed by Councillor Harper, seconded by Councillor Cook, I'm presuming, yeah. We've asked whether the Cabinet could provide overview and scrutiny with a longer ranged forward plan with the knowledge that we know that as the further we go into the future, things may be subject to change. Is that agreed? Lovely, thank you. Any other comments on the forward plan? I've got Councillor Kahili, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Harper, then Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. Can I just double check those additional ones you said, because they're not on my paperwork? The ones you said about, I know you mentioned Farley, and my ears pricked up because it's not on mine.
They were published yesterday on the refresh that we get on the emails and online, but our agenda had gone out before that. So they are available online, but they haven't hit our agenda yet.
And how many additional ones are there?
Six.
Six, just so I know know what I don't know, if that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to send an email around to everybody just to put the titles of them so that when you look on the forward plan, you can, look for those ones if that's helpful. I'll do that after. Councillor Harper.
Yeah, I was wondering whether possibly the arts and cultural strategy we could call in for pre-decision scrutiny. Only it's clearly a 5-year strategy, and over the last few years, the council's been moving quite well in terms of the area. So it'd just be useful for us. It'd be useful, I think, to have the ability to do pre-decision scrutiny on that, given it's such a significant part of the council's work in terms of what the public see, and it's important in terms of placemaking and so on. So I just wonder if we could call that in for, let's say, pre-decision scrutiny.
I suppose the only thing I'd say about that comments from the chair is that it is going to planning pack on the 2nd of July. So there's opportunities for visiting members to go there and feed into that comment. I mean, is it something that we feel so strongly about at overview and scrutiny that we need to do pre-decision scrutiny on this? I feel sure that the arts and culture strategy will be a thing that we can all look forward to and value, and we can build into it through a visiting member. So I'm not sure. Councillor Field.
I think I'd echo that sentiment. I mean, we've discussed at this committee before. We're asking officers and cabinet members to come and present. I feel it's incumbent upon members of the committee to avail themselves of the opportunity to act as a visiting member to the consulting pack if they wish. I think it's a bit much to keep doing that.
Councillor Harper, you want to come back?
I think the difficulty is with the Constitution allows us to do pre-decision scrutiny, and it's inevitable that we don't have the reports before us when we have to decide whether we wish to do pre-decision scrutiny. All we will ever have is a title of a report, and we have to make a decision whether we think it's worth calling it in for pre-decision scrutiny or not. almost every single item, in fact, every item here, will be going to a policy advisory committee. However, the role of a policy advisory committee is that they can only consider the proposal in the report. They can't consider the context of the report in terms of a wider area, which is what this committee can do. And I would have thought an arts and cultural strategy would be quite a good one, where you may wish to look at the wider picture in terms of the council's approach to arts and culture, wider than what the actual report will necessarily say. But we don't have. We obviously don't have the report, and that's why I know one of my colleagues here was, we were considering calling it in for pre-decision scrutiny, just so we can see what's coming up, think about the wider context, and see if we can make any suggestions which may, without seeing the report, potentially improve it or raise issues for the cabinet to then consider.
I do see that point as well, and you are quite right. The policy advisory committees are not scrutiny committees. That's how our constitution's done. I don't think we need a big discussion on this, though. I think we'll just have a vote. Do we want to bring this in for pre-decision scrutiny at the pack? So votes in favour? Votes against? Abstentions? Right, we're going to leave that one off then. And I've got Councillor Wilkinson next.
It would be good to call in the Springfield project. I'd be interested to know how they'll be keeping the social housing mix going and keeping an eye on that, basically.
Sorry, point of order against myself. 2 were for, 1 was against, everyone else abstained. So that will be coming to overview and scrutiny. I can only apologise. And now, Councillor Wilkinson, if you would start from the top again on the next one, thank you. I can't do my maths this evening, sorry, it's been a long day at work. Carry on, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. And the Springfield project, just because I'd like to keep an eye on the proposed tender mix of affordable and social housing, and to ensure that the social housing is kept into that development.
Sorry, could you just tell me what page you're on, Councillor Wilkinson?
12. Yeah, 12's there.
That one, I'm afraid, is going next week. We've passed that date for pre-decision scrutiny because they're making that decision on the 18th. So, sorry, that one is a definite no. Who did I have next? I think I had Councillor Mackay next. Yes, I did.
I think I'm quite possibly last on here, and mine's a very trivial. I recall attending a committee meeting where there was a very lively discussion on Kent Farmers and food market. And I see that struck off, just out of curiosity. A little background of why? Or is it already...
I will pass you over to Cabinet Member there. Councillor English might be able to enlighten us on that one.
Because the final work on preparing that report is to go to Cabinet is almost done. The previous discussion the scrutiny has already taken place, essentially. So we are at a position where the process has reached a concluding point almost. You will obviously, like the previous item with Springfield, be able to turn up and make representations as visiting members, and I encourage people to do that at the Cabinet discussion when it comes forward in the very near future.
I personally didn't have any strong views, but I know some other councillors did, and I just thought it created an awful lot of debate over nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. I think we have got a query here because I was told as chair that item had been removed from the forward plan. So I don't think we've done scrutiny on it, and I think it has been removed. So I'm not sure if you know why that is.
We've had a report and it went to full council, which effectively a short circuit stuff. Sorry? And then it went to Cabinet, and so we've actually been round the loop already. So it's not been removed, it's actually happened.
It doesn't require another decision.
And it doesn't need to be done again because we've done it. There was a very full discussion at full council, and there's a very full discussion at Cabinet following from the full council discussion and the reference, which was amended, well, which wasn't amended in the end of full council. There was an attempt to amend it. And I can assure you that all the scrutiny has taken place, and it is too late to do it again.
I think the cogs are working. What that happened was it came as a notice of motion to full council, didn't it? That's right. That's why it then got referred straight to Cabinet. That's why it hasn't hit any packs, which is what Councillor Mackay was thinking of, and why we haven't done pre-decision scrutiny, because it wasn't a report in the traditional, it was notice of motion straight through, report to Cabinet, they've decided on that one. So we could presumably do a call-in, but no pre-decision scrutiny.
Well,
but is it done now?
It's quite difficult because the Cabinet has made a decision some time ago, and the calling period has comprehensively lapsed because it wasn't called in within the period, so there is no further decision to be made.
Fine. So I think it's more
so
of
there
a
will be
probably
some subsequent decisions to implement some of this going forward, at which point I would encourage people to come forward and contribute. But the substantial decision has been made. But there will be some implementation decisions potentially as we go forward, depending on that, which might have to go to Cabinet. But we haven't determined exactly when those would be.
Okay. Councillor Cook.
I don't want to prolong this bit, but I think I need to ask one question. If a substantive decision has been made by Cabinet on this, can I be directed to where that was published, please? Okay, thank you.
We're going to get an email to explain it from Mrs. Woodhouse, so thank you very much for that, offering that. Councillor Cannon, I don't want to prolong this, let's keep it short.
Just on that, so you say the time that has lapsed, so just from officers and Democratic Services team, can I have when it lapsed, please?
Went to Cabinet months ago, so it would have lapsed several months ago.
Thank you. I think a very excellent way forward has just been suggested, which is that every meeting that we have of overview and scrutiny, we will receive an urgent update, which is a refreshed forward plan for the overview and scrutiny committee. Therefore, we're going to remove some of these administrative errors on dates and things like that, and I think then we will definitely be looking at things we can do pre-decision scrutiny on, and we will have it as far into the future as we can do, but I think that's an excellent way forward, and we will take that route. I can't see anyone else indicating, so I move that the Cabinet forward plan be noted. Is that agreed? Lovely, thank you. That takes us on to item 14, which is our committee work programme, and we're going to have that briefly introduced by our Democratic Services Officer, if that's okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chair. The committee will be looking at the work programme in greater detail later on, but I'd like to raise that the committee previously requested to review the quarterly budget reports, given its overall responsibility in reviewing the budget annually. This was not recorded in the minutes in the usual way, so I'd like the committee to reconfirm whether it'd like to receive the quarterly update budget reports and give considerations for this starting from the first quarter budget moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. So it's basically for us to decide whether we want to formally ask for the quarterly monitoring reports, because it wasn't quite recorded in the right way moving forward. It's actually a good time to do it because there's little value in looking at quarter 4 that's passed anyway. We may as well look at the end of quarter 1 going forward on the next municipal year. So just really looking for indications, is that something that we still want to receive to the committee? And the first one in that case that we would get would be quarter 1, and it would be a quarterly thing going forward, not every month. So I can see Councillor Harper nodding. I can see Councillor Cook indicating.
Well, I think it would be a good idea. It would help tie up with our role in terms of scrutinising the budget when it comes up, to actually then follow it through to see how it's progressing over the year, because obviously then at the end of that year we'll then be looking at the following year's budget. So it just makes a whole sort of circular thing, doesn't it? So I would suggest that we do it.
Thank you. I'm taking that as a proposal. And Councillor Cook, are you seconding?
I'll second, Madam Chairman. I agree with Councillor Harper. I personally think this is probably one of the more important things that we as a Scrutiny Overview and Scrutiny Committee should be doing, because there is nothing ultimately more important than monitoring the administration's control and working of the budget. That is where we do the job on behalf of the residents and ensuring that their money is being spent and accounted for properly and appropriately. And to do that once a year, as a wash up at the end of the 4th quarter, you've got to pick up the problems on a quarterly basis. And if there are issues, we can then ask for clarification. And I think I wholeheartedly support the idea of doing this on a quarterly basis.
Okay, great. So I've got a proposer and a seconder. Is it agreed that we bring the quarterly financial monitoring reports to Overview and Scrutiny for us to have a look at? Agreed. Lovely, thank you. Councillor Keeley, sorry, are you indicating? No, okay. So that moves us on, don't forget we're going to skip to item 16, which is our planning enforcement report. So this was the work that was done on our planning enforcement review. It was the one that was done through committee, and we looked into, we had lots of help from officers about the service. We asked various different questions and ways forward. Sue King was in attendance and helped us immensely with this. So this is our draft report. It starts at page 39 of your papers and ultimately culminates in our list of recommendations arising from the review, which is on page 45. So we've got 4 recommendations that are drafted and going forward to Cabinet for presenting next week. So our options here are we can amend anything within the report, or we can send it forward to Cabinet, or we can say we're not going to send it forward to Cabinet. I mean, I obviously propose that we've done the work, we've got the recommendations, and I'm happy to propose from the Chair that we send this forward to Cabinet. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Parfitt. Do you want to say anything? No? So votes in favour of sending this off to Cabinet? That looks unanimous. Councillor Cannon? Yeah. That's everyone. Thank you. So we'll take that to Cabinet next week and present it to them. And then don't forget, we'll await their recommendations that will come back to this committee at a future date. Thank you. That takes us on to item 17, which is the corporate strategy. That starts on page 46 of our agenda pack. So there's been some changes made to the Year 1 action plan. We've got those in a table, but basically there's been some refocusing done. So the integrated transport strategy has been changed to a town centre movement strategy. The heritage strategy is changed to heritage in the town centre, and there's a creative makerspace other UK SPF projects for 25-26. Some items have narrowed in scope, 1 pump track instead of 2, 1 citizens' assembly on violence against women and girls, deferring the assembly for transport. The work on the local plan review has been refined. Undertaking a Gypsy Romany Traveller community outreach action has been forwarded to identify and buy a public Gypsy Romany Traveller site with consultation as part of that process, and some items have been deferred. So the study into the leisure facilities has been deferred, and the strategy to champion and deliver increased access to further higher and lifelong learning in the borough has also been deferred. I'm not sure, Councillor English, did you want to say anything else on this?
Yes, quite a lot actually, but I shall cut it as short as can. The corporate strategy has been informed by the possibility that we may all get reorganised out of existence. Therefore, we have concentrated as a Cabinet and as an administration on bringing forward those things that we are fairly confident can be progressed reasonably quickly and will give a legacy to the borough of Maidstone. So there has been a lot of prioritising. Now, if it turns out that local government reorganisation and devolution gets kicked down the road and we have more time to develop our strategy, then of course some of the things that have not been brought forward at this stage will be reincorporated and brought forward if we have more time for delivery. And that, I'm afraid, could well happen because the timetable for local government review and reorganisation is, you know, like the proverbial piece of string, how long is it? So that is informed the decision making here. As you were saying, Madam Chairman, a number of things have been tweaked in order to allow us to bring forward deliverable bite-sized chunks of progress in terms of, for example, moving forward with substantive improvements to the environmental quality of the town centre, addressing movement strategies and key issues. The report is fairly self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go through it in detail, but what I would say is that we firmly believe that this reflects a sincere attempt to deliver for the people across the borough of Maidstone in the time frame that we have available. It will be easier, given the comprehensive nature of the report, if you actually ask questions rather than me talking, because I might not be addressing the particular concerns that you have as members of this very important committee.
Thank you, Councillor English. Could you just pop your mic off while I go to some of the members? I've got Councillor Parfitt first, and then I'm going to come to Councillor Mackay and Councillor Harper. Councillor Parfitt.
Thank you, Chairman. I apologise to some of people will have heard what I said last night, but I am broadly going to say what I said last night because I think we've got different cabinet members here, so I think that's quite important. It's really observational, really, what I want to say. The feeling of reading this new corporate strategy is it is incredibly town centre focused, and as a representative of a sort of not rural ward, but you know, for example, the transport strategy, it's the rural areas that are struggling with the buses and being able to get into the town in the first place. So that, you know, the heritage strategy, again, it's all town centre. And I know the UK Shared Prosperity Fund was designed or focused around the town centre, and it had to be so, but it just means that everything is being condensed in the town. And I just want the Cabinet to be mindful of that. I know the Rural Prosperity Fund is coming, and that's welcome, and I think it was really successful last time, and I think it was really good that it focused on quite big projects, and so it delivered something really tangible for those villages that did put in applications, and I would like to see something, a similar kind of focus again. The Gypsy and Roma travelling community outreach, again, I think it's important that we do have a site, and well, a third site really, but I think what is important is that it actually makes an impact. You know, if we're tinkering around with sort of 10 or 12 pitches, it almost becomes fairly pointless. And obviously, and I did ask about the Citizens' Assembly, whether the sort of whether that 100,000, if we're only doing one project, does that release some money? But Angela said she would get back to me on that. So that's still my question. And my final question is the local plan. Are we just focusing on those DPDs, or are we looking at the local plan review in the whole? Thank you. Sorry, there was a lot there.
Well, Councillor Harwood may want to address the last point in more detail than I would. I would say that the highlights of some of this first year action plan are perhaps through their very nature, because they are a selection of highlights, do not reflect all of what the action plan in its and actions that are being taken forward contain. In terms of the Rural Prosperity Fund, you've mentioned that will be going ahead with a particular focus this year on rural businesses, including farms and farmers, which, to go back to the previous discussion in a way, the area actually I think is that we need to actually focus on in terms of the part of the borough that may be neglected is actually not the area that's defined as the rural area, which benefits from funding such as the Rural Prosperity Fund, but those that are not in the key urban area but don't qualify for rural prosperity funding or some other grants as well, like Beersted, for example, which doesn't benefit from either the urban or the rural prosperity funding. So there are some anomalies that we will need to work through and see how we can support those communities. And wearing up various other parish council hats, I'm working on what we can do with that. In terms of the local planners, I said Tony will probably have more details on this, but as I said, the actions we're undertaking are to a very large extent defined by the time frame that we are likely to have. The simple fact is, it is unlikely that we are going to be able to deliver a local plan within the lifetime of Maidstone Borough Council. What we can do is do a lot of preparatory work and evidence gathering, and where that is being done to a large extent. So we are focused on deliverable things. What I would say is that there is quite a lot in our plans, including, if you pick at random, biodiversity, net gain, and the Nature Recovery Fund. There is a lot of activity there that would, well, yes, there'd be some benefit to the urban area, but many of the areas that could benefit from this are rural and suburban areas. Similarly, we are moving forward at reasonable pace. And again, Councillor Harwood may have something to say on this, with the work on protecting the Greensand Ridge, which is of key concern to many people who live in the rural communities. I could go on, but there is a lot of activity there which are not limited to the urban area. In terms of the Egyptian Traveller site, yes, you're quite right, Councillor Parfitt. If we have some little tiddly site which doesn't provide very much in the way of facility, we'll have upset potentially a considerable number of local people, but we won't have solved the problem, which continually undermines this council's planning position. So we need to have a solution that is worth having. It's worth the disruption.
Councillor Harwood, did you want to take up the end bit on the
Yeah,
planning?
if I may come in, just to pick up on a few of the issues. And one, there is a significant amount of work going on seeking an extension to the Kent Downs national landscape into the Greensand Ridge and the Len Valley. I mean, it's quite a challenging piece of work. I've certainly been out on tours with landscape professionals and so on, and taking photographs all about. There's a lot of work going on there, so I think that is fundamental to protecting some of the wards of a number of the members who are actually on this committee, if that comes through, because as you know, national landscape is equivalent to national park. It's a significant planning protection. So I think that's a really fundamental piece of work, which certainly from my portfolio perspective is taking up an awful lot of time in terms of meetings and site visits and so on. Coming back to the site the search for a further public gypsy and traveller site, we know that within the gypsy and traveller community that there are some very high levels of long-term limiting illness. We know that there are some real financial issues there. So I think the equivalent of affordable pitches, if you like, for that community is important from the perspective not just of planning, but also in just kind of humanity. So that work is going on, but I do take on board Councillor English's point around our performance at appeals being not what we would like when it comes to gypsy and traveller applications. And I think that once we do get a properly appointed high quality public site, it will help us on delivering the numbers. And just to put it into some kind of perspective, I think there are 71,200 settled households, but there are just under 600 gypsy and traveller households. So it's a relatively small number. So we need to be reasonable, when we're looking at what the affordable requirement is, but it's still going to be quite a few pitches. So we're looking for sites on that basis. And I think the Gypsy and Traveller DPD will assist as well. And I think that is another piece of work that's being carried out. And then just finally, on the local plan, we're got one arm tied behind our back a little bit because of the lack of guidance so far on local government reorganisation and what that means for spatial planning. So we're still awaiting some guidance on that, but the plan currently is that we will start again in earnest on a new local plan in about September, and essentially what I have requested work carried out on is that we restore a member oversight group. Some members here might remember the Local Development Document Advisory Group and the Local Plans Group, where there was members kind of poured over the potential allocations around the potential sites, around maps of the borough looking areas we need to protect, areas that potentially could bear some further development, so that we've got that real kind of expert group of members is built up, and they have certainly some kind of influence over it and are able to act on behalf of the communities they serve. So, hopefully come the autumn, things will start moving. We will have had the appropriate guidance. We will have set up that expert scrutiny group to help develop the document. And there are going to be some very unpalatable decisions to be made. We know about the very significant challenges we had during the local plan review. We know that the sites that developers have interest in, the numbers are only going in one direction, and the amount of land is reducing all the time. So we will have our work cut out come the autumn. Thank you.
Thank you. Quite right. Share the fun of local plan making. No one likes to be one of the, speaking as one of them, 6 people that apparently ruined the borough on lots of political literature. Right, I've got Councillor Mackay, then Councillor Harper, then Councillor Keeley on this. Councillor Mackay.
Okay. Clive, you mentioned almost straight away the likelihood of reorganisation. Now, I suppose the first question is, do you take it as a given that you don't? Then it's pointless me asking my next question then, because I would have asked, what, if it was highly likely, which I personally think the 4 Tunbridge Wells, Tunbridge and Morley, Sevenoaks and Maidstone will create what work is going ahead in preparation for that. So I guess the answer is nothing.
But the answer is not nothing. Sorry.
I think there are a different number of work streams, having been to the leaders' meetings on this. So there's a various, various financial work streams, other work programs, all fitting together, of which the local plan is obviously a part of that. But Councillor English might be able to say more about exactly how that bit's going to fit in when we go to the unitaries.
I don't think the question was about the local plan, it was about the preparation work for the unitary council model.
Can I be more precise then?
Yes.
All right. I think Maidstone over the years has been at the forefront of combining shared services, and each of those shared services seems to function quite well. There is no particular pattern. We're not fussed who we get in bed with, really, or it doesn't seem so. But we know if there is reorganisation and there is going to be a unitary West Kent, we do know who our partners are going to be. And we will have to move towards single HR, single internal audit, licensing, IT, environmental health. I think we should face reality if we do think it's.
I think
the thing is that we're at a difficult stage at the moment. So proposals have to be in by November, and proposals can come from any one authority or a group of authorities, and then all of the responses from MHCLG will go back out to everybody. I think we're not at the stage yet where we would be able to clearly say what geographical area we would be in, because we're still at the proposal making stage. But Councillor English?
As I've been attempting to say, that there's been a lot of work. The West Kent partners have done a huge amount of work together with our expert consultants on how the offer would stack up. Obviously, you don't get into staffing arrangements and everything else until you've have some indication that that's what's likely to happen. However, a detailed examination of how it would work has been done. I have to be honest, as far as I can see from looking in to an extent from outside, that the level of work is uneven across the county in terms of how much research and understanding there is, and it is quite clear there is mixed views amongst the councils in North Kent and East Kent as to who they want to partner with. At the end of the day, it is very likely that there will be a number of different submissions going in rather than one agreed submission, but it will be up to the government to take that forward, how or not, as the case may be. The reason I said I was not certain that this would happen is because it is infinitely possible that the whole process does not run to time, and we end up theoretically getting delayed potentially beyond the date of a general election, and who knows what would happen then. However, if things do proceed to timetable, then all we can do is submit our very well researched bid and hope that the government supports it.
Thank you. Happy?
Personally, I would work on the assumption that East Kent will be a unified authority at some stage, and that we should do preparatory works, because having worked for large organisations and where you leave things to the last minute. No, but we have experience on shared services. We know what to do. Even if we went forward with shared services in the authorities, we wouldn't be wasting our time, even if the whole thing was knocked on the head. But anyway, I'm sure there's 4 authorities in question. I'm sure they've all got their own views and they've all got their own timetables.
Thank you.
On that, the West Kent group are fairly united, are very united, and have worked together on this proposal going back to the previous administration, so it's not new. And I can assure you that as far as we can, we have researched what we would need to do. There are issues because the boundary of a potential new West Kent Unitary Authority does not neatly coincide with our existing shared services arrangements, and that is the issue, well, an issue that we would have to explore. However, there is nothing potentially stopping a new unitary authority continuing to have a shared partnership arrangement with another unitary authority. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that the shared service would completely cease.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Harper next.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the reprioritisation of the corporate plan. I think it makes a lot of sense to obviously do it in light of the fact that the world's moved under our feet between when we were looking at the corporate plan previously and where we are now. There's a couple of things I'd like to suggest, which will become as no surprise because I've mentioned them at least 2 previous meetings. So the first one is around citizens' assembly. I would hope that during undertaking the first one in terms of the violence against women and girls, that we can use that as a learning process for our staff, because I know from discussions at leaders group meetings that a lot of the work in terms of identifying who goes on what citizens we use, who we invite to be interviewed and all the rest of it is going to be done through the use of consultants. But if we can have our staff shadowing the consultants through that process, I would hope that would be a good learning point for them, given that all our staff will be looking for new jobs in the course of the next 2 years with local government review. But also, it may be that we could bring forward the Transport Citizens Assembly if our staff have picked up sufficient understanding on how to actually run the process in-house. So we wouldn't need to use consultants. It would be done a lot cheaper, because it would be a real shame if we, put the effort in and we only actually produce one of these citizens' assemblies where I think, and I was a sceptic originally on it, but given that we are doing it, it would be good to see us do multiple ones, but then subsequent ones to be done using in-house staff, because that would skill them up and put them in a much better situation in terms of finding a new role under local government review. So that's one thing. And the other thing you won't be that surprised at is my concern in paragraph 2.5 in terms of the leisure centre and the decision to defer looking into that, because if we, as is obviously the intention is not to do the initial work next year, we will be moving into a likely unitary scenario in 2027 when we may be stopped from making any new decisions with no plans for a leisure centre or a new leisure centre in Maidstone, when at the current time Tunbridge and Malling are proceeding with building or planning to build their new leisure centre, and a number of other local authorities, which will be in the West Kent makeup, if that's what we end up, will also have either new or fairly new facilities, whereas Maidstone will have something which was built in the 1970s. And the likelihood is, with all the pressures on unitary authorities, that providing a up-to-date leisure centre for the Maidstone part of a West Kent authority, and bearing in mind we sit on one extra, out right on the eastern end of this authority, we could easily find that there is no refurbished or new facility available for our residents for decades to come. And the danger of not doing any work now is that if that current facility at Moat Park at some time becomes uneconomic to maintain, we already know that it's running costs have increased by £1 million in capital maintenance about 2 years ago. That will only continue on an upward trajectory. That we could find ourselves in the future of a West Kent unitary deciding it can't continue with a leisure centre serving Maidstone and Maidstone's residents. Whereas if we had started work on it now, got as far as letting contracts, it would be unlikely that a new authority would come in and stop. Because otherwise, why is Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council proceeding when they're in precisely the same situation as us?
Thank you. I mean, I do really agree with that. I think you've spoken to my views on it as well. I think, you know, if the centre's to last until 2031, you don't just put one up in one day. You need to start planning. And I think, you know, if you're looking at a 2-year build, that's back to 2029. You know, that's literally on the cusp of when we go to the new authority. If we don't have those plans to hand over at that moment, or we haven't done some foundations, or we don't have an idea, then it will all wait again. Because, you know, if you think an administration change in any authority, be it district or county, causes a lot of upheaval and change, and various committee structures change, what a unitary change to a unitary will cause will be an absolute year of more of up, you know, as things move from one to another. So I think if we don't progress that work, we don't have something concrete that's either started or we can hand over, then we will very quickly reach the point where that centre is uneconomical. And also it is one of the biggest carbon issues in our portfolio. So there's that aspect as well. So I am very concerned that that hasn't really featured. And I know there's leisure facilities options, but we have that facility, and it is where 80% of our population are based. So it is the best location for it. So we just do need to have a think about, you know, I'm saying the best general location for it, maybe they're not the best actual footprint of it, but I think we need to have a think about it and start to really motor those plans forward, and maybe think just wider than a leisure centre. You know, it could be a health facility of a local basis as well. It doesn't need to be the strict leisure facility like for like replacement that we've got now. And I think sometimes in times of change, if you don't have ambition, then where are we going? Councillor Kahili, I've got next.
Come back on this. Members seem to be under the impression that the key date here for a major new capital work is the date of the establishment of a unitary authority. I'm sorry, it's not. The key date is when we get a section, I think it's 24, notice served on us if the unitary authority goes ahead, which means that you are limited as a council in terms of the new capital obligations you can take over, that you can pass on to the new unitary council that is being established. So that may be as little as a year to 18 months away. So we would have to do, all of the work on a new leisure centre or options elsewhere, let all the contracts and do everything else within a 12 to 18 month time frame, maximum, might be less. So, because it's not the date of when the unitary council is established that is the key date for this sort of capital decision. It's when the notice is served that you cannot take on anything other than routine obligations pending the creation of the unitary authority.
I wasn't working from that date. I was working from the date of the leisure centre and working back from that. And it might be quite right that you say that all of your work, you know, we go to a unitary so quickly that there is no need. I'm just saying, if we're working back from 2031 with the build of 2 years, we're sort of talking 2028. That could be right on the cusp. So thinking forward.
We won't be able to let contracts in 2027 or 2028 of this sort of scale.
Councillor Keeley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. Overall, really like the reprioritised action plan. I've not had a car the last few weeks, and I've been in and out of town far more than I usually am, and I've heard comments about the changes in the town from people I know and from people at events I've gone to. There's been some fab work in between NBC and KCC with the arts and creating things for people to see. So that was really good. There's a really good programme of events, and there's been comments about increased safety and that, so that's all good. But I do have to reiterate what Councillor Parfitt said about the borough, the ward that we represent is in between town and it's not quite rural enough. So there is that hinterland that does need to be considered going forward, because we've had, I nearly swore then, blimmin' awful transport issues, and that transport strategy, integrated transport strategy, needs to be considered sooner rather than later, because the impact of the damage ecologically that is happening in the more built up but not rural areas, and that's not dissing the rural areas either, they need protecting too. So that's something that maybe needs to be considered, that they're deemed rural but they're not rural, they're in between, so that's something to consider. So yeah, just a couple of comments. And also, Councillor Harwood, you mentioned still working on the national, I knew you were working on the national landscape. Is there a new date for that? Because last time that was brought up when I was at a meeting, it had been closed for applications, but I knew you were going to take that forward. Thank you.
Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, in terms of why we're focusing on town centre, it's because of the available time, essentially, and a lot of the traffic from the rural and the suburban areas is going into the town. If we can make the town work better, and because we have more control in the town centre, we're not the highway authority, so therefore on major transport arteries, you know, we are very unlikely to be listened to, and we have got no sway over it. When it comes to the operation of the town centre, as a district council, we do have more influence. So therefore, it's the art of the achievable. And the big problem with Maidstone is that all the traffic comes through it, no matter from where it's kind of set off and where it's going to, really. And if we can make that work better, we can get more people. There's lots and lots of people living around town centre who could walk or take other routes, but they don't, because they feel it's unsafe or it's uncomfortable or it's unpleasant. And we also have the focus for most of the secondary schools as well within the urban area, particularly because we're in a selective area. We of course have the grammar schools that brings people in right from the outer rural areas and beyond. And therefore we've got to make the town safe, and we've got to make it walkable, and that helps us kind of overcome some of those traffic issues. I mean, I was talking to a colleague about this recently, and if you ask why quality of life has gone downhill so much in the last few decades, it is because of the tyranny of the motor car. It's this absolutely, children can't play anymore, can't get places because the roads are too dangerous, and because parents don't trust their children to go beyond that.
We're veering wildly off the question, which I believe was when the Green Sand Ridge work was going to be done.
Sorry?
The question Councillor Keeley asked was, when is the Green Sand Ridge work going to be done?
Well, first, the question that was asked was about the transport plan and whether that would work. In terms of the Green Sand Ridge work, that is going to be brought forward as part of the Kent Downs National Landscape Management Plan when that is redrafted, and that work is ongoing now. So, when it is finished and it's signed off, it will need to go before an inspector, so the government will be the final arbiters, but it will hopefully be later this year.
Can I just reiterate, I was actually complimenting the Cabinet on what had happened in town, just merely suggesting that going forwards you do need to consider the rural areas too, and that gap in between. And my question was, have they reopened the application for the National Landscape, which was what was closed last time? That was my exact question. The rest were comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to come out, I think what I was trying to say in a long-winded way is that I think a lot of the issues from the outer areas it is the town centre traffic issues which impact them. So if we can sort that out, it should have a knock-on effect far beyond the boundary of the town centre. I think that's what I should have said in a shorter way.
Sorry to just come back. The issue isn't, I'm not saying the issue is that they shouldn't do it. And I'm very, very aware that highways are responsible for our roads, not NBC, after the amount of things I've dealt with the last few weeks. The problem of people driving in is because there aren't buses to some of these semi-rural places.
Councillor English, were you indicating?
I mean, in a way, we're sort of constrained in the discussion by the fact that we're talking about a particular action plan, but there are other things going on which are designed to address some of the issues that fall in both in the rural area and, as I said previously in one of my answers, that particular area that tends to fall between rural and urban and miss out on some of the funding. So we are looking at quite a lot of work in terms of what we can do to bring forward practical suggestions in terms of bus services and supporting for practical transport and environmental improvements. And as an aside, although it's not about movement, although the lack of movement can sometimes cause it, we are widening out and looking at an air quality management plan that is wider than the very limited area in the town centre. Preparatory work on that is I believe, moving forward as we speak. Well, possibly not because it's after working hours, but you know what I mean. And so there are a lot of things going on, but they wouldn't necessarily appear in the year one action plan because that is sort of highlights. And there's a lot of not necessarily routine, but lower level procedures taking place that address a lot of these concerns, and some of those are transport and environmental related, and hopefully through the next year members will see some of those coming forward.
Thank you. I can't see anybody else indicating. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackay.
Very quickly, I thought this mainly started off with talking about the leisure centre, and I think Paul is good. Yeah, okay. Quite right to raise it. All I would make is a very simple point here is, and I think it's recognised from what I hear, we can't just rebuild what we built in the 70s. And I think we should look at how we enhance Maidstone. And I think the one thing that is missing in Kent overall is a theatre, stadium, for an optimum size to get some of the bigger bands, acts and shows, whether they be ballet, comedians, bands or whatever. You know, I'm not talking about building another O2 in Maidstone, you know, but, you know, I think if we have ambition, we may get somewhere.
Thank you. I can't see anybody else indicating, and nobody either amended the plan or proposed any new actions. So Councillor Cook, quickly.
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, because nobody's moved anything, and I was sort of, I think we have to kind of move approve the strategy, but I think as a committee, it would be appropriate to express some concerns specifically regarding our more rural areas and transport and the lack of transport in the more rural areas. Which leads to isolation in the absence of people getting in their cars. And that's not, you know, I mean, it's all very well being anti-car, which I think some of the expressions of this evening have lent themselves to. But for some people, there's not an option. And I also think that in terms of health and well-being, leisure facilities are very important. And we should be planning for the future there as well. So I'd like to see whatever we move as a motion, agree the strategy, but express those concerns in those key areas as well, because I think that's what the debate has focused on, and I would support those concerns as well, because they're the concerns I share.
Thank you. I mean, I think, you know, when we have got a Paralympian based here that has to go to Stratford for swimming, you know, because we don't have the length pool and we can't do county swimming, that is a big thing that we could have as the county town. I know that's one thing, the theatre I take on board from Councillor Mackay, but however, I haven't heard anyone proposing anything, but I've seen Councillor Harper is indicating.
Yeah, could I move that in addition to the recommendation on page 47 that the revised Year 1 action plan be approved, that we also add I suppose, a second recommendation to pick up the facts around the citizens' assembly, that if possible, after having undertaken the first one, that we look to take a second one forward using our own resources. I mean, because I think that would make much more sensible use of the concept of citizens' assemblies. I think also I would ask that we should be recommending to the Cabinet that they do look at the issue of transport, which would be the second citizens' assembly, which would pick up the points I think being raised, and that if there's any change in the timetable for local government review from the local government review timetable, that a study into leisure facilities commence if there is any opportunity to undertake work prior to the Section 24 notice being served on us. That's just those 3 points I would move as a additional recommendation to the one we've got here.
Have we got a seconder for that? No, so that falls. Councillor Cook.
I was intending to move when I spoke just moments ago. I'd like to move that the adoption of the plan as presented, but I think it's right that as a committee we add to that, but the committee wishes to Cabinet to note its very real concerns regarding the diminution of our rural settlements, the impact of transport on those rural settlements, and more focus needs to be given for the future to leisure facilities. In terms of, and that's the end of the motion, Madam Chairman, but in terms of what Councillor Harper was saying, I think this whole business about the citizens forum, let's wait and see how the first one goes first, and then and if it's a roaring success, then that's great, then we can build on that. If it's not, then we'll need to look at it and see why it's not a roaring success, and see if we can review, have a proper review, and have another look at it on that basis. I'd just like to leave that's where I'd like to leave the citizens forum. But that's my motion, Madam Chairman, if that's seconded.
Right, you're going to have to tidy that up a little bit. What I will say is that when Cabinet have the forward plan, they will get some of our comments that are being gathered for them when they make the decision. The Democratic Services officers are really ably doing that right now. So your proposal is that we approve the Year 1 action plan with some informatives, picking up some of the comments that we've made tonight about rural bus services, and help me out, what was the leisure study into the leisure centre, sports facilities, and we're not going to make any recommendation about the Citizens' Assembly because we're very happy to not hamstrung the administration, so they can do one, see how you go. It only says the second one's going to be deferred anyway, so I think that fits with the wording. So it's going forward. So we're going forward with the informative that we would like the cabinet to, the administration to re-look and conclude the rural areas as well, and perhaps put a refined focus to some of those issues, particularly around transport, and we would like them to reinvestigate whether they could bring forward the study into leisure facility options in the borough, if at all possible. Fine. On that basis, that's the motion. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Parfitt. Votes in favour of that motion. Yeah. Votes against? And abstentions? Councillor okay, right, great. Yeah, so that goes forward on that basis. Thank you, everybody. That concludes that item. We're now going to be moving on to item 18, which is the seal bidding round 2, which is on pages 58 to 102 of the agenda pack. And this report is going to be introduced by the Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and Management. If I can hand you over to Councillor Harwood, thank you. Shall I kick off? So basically, we've amassed some money. Seal bidding round 1 was completed, and the money at that point went to St Faith's, the Bearsted Road improvements, and the Heather House project. The pot has built up again, but not to a large amount, probably about circa 5 million. And so they're preparing to open seal bidding round 2. Which will mean that people can be putting in their bids, infrastructure providers can put in their bids for accessing that money to spend on capital projects. Anything else you want to add, Councillor Harwood?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this won't take a long time. This is a very, very simple report. Essentially, nothing has changed from bidding round 1. It's exactly the same document that was developed in 2019. We'll be using it again for the second round. It will not be the Cabinet or members making the initial determination of any bids. It will be officers who will judge them against the process that is before you. So we're not here to discuss the individual bids against this, because we don't know what they're going to be, and the process is precisely the same as it was last time, and we're waiting to see what comes in. There was at the Policy Advisory Committee, I never mentioned it in the introduction, but there was, I frankly didn't really even see it, but there was an appendix, but I think that appendix, which was talking about a pairwise discussion within an informal meeting, I think that's irrelevant really to this debate, because essentially you've got the bidding round document in front of you. It will be officers who judge against that, and we will see what comes out at the end of the machine. Thank you.
Thank you. I suppose I'd just like a little bit of clarity on that. So we do have that within our papers, and it's on page 80. So this is the priority list. And as I understand it, that is when bids come in, they'll be evaluated against this priority list. And say you got a bid in for the first priority and the 6th priority, presumably you would go for the first priority over the 6th. That seems to be what this Appendix 2 suggests. So
no, and that's what confused me, where the debate went off on this in the Policy Advisory Committee. You've got the document in front of you, which sets out in the prospectus what the bids can be against and what you are. That's the document. This appendix has no relevance to the prospectus at all. It was an exercise within a meeting where there was some discussion really against the background of the corporate plan and looking at kind of priorities coming out of that. So I think out of context, it doesn't make a lot of sense against the prospectus. So I would just say that hopefully we don't have to have the debate again that we had the other week, or earlier on in the week, because, you know, frankly, this is the document you're looking at, and that will be determined, as it was last time, by officers looking at the bids that come in.
So early doors to maybe cut down some discussion. Could I suggest that we agree that seal bidding round 2 is opened without any reference to Appendix 2 or priority areas for seal spending?
Yeah.
Oh, 1 second.
Yeah, that's why I was a little bit kind of intrigued by the debate at the earlier meeting and didn't really intervene in it, because it was never going to be. It was added. Yeah, precise. Well, so I never even found the appendix at the end of that report for the last meeting.
You've got to read to the end. That's the devil's in the detail. Councillor Harper, were you indicating? So I'm going to leave that there unless I get a seconder, but let's open it up and see what everyone's saying. Okay, yeah. Councillor Parfitt is second.
I was the chair of the Policy Advisory Committee last week when we discussed this, and what I did draw at the end of that debate everyone's attention to was the prospectus document, as Councillor Harwood said, and the criteria which are listed there, which is what the officers will assess every application against. Now, Appendix 2 just seemed to be a bit, as you say, is a bit of a red herring, because it didn't link in to the documentation we're sending out to people and the marking criteria we're going to use. So, assuming that the Cabinet doesn't amend that prospectus and so on, I think we can just take this and, you know, and submit it, because it will be, they will be marking up on the criteria listed here, which doesn't refer to any of those issues, does refer to our corporate plan and our budget, medium-term strategy and biodiversity reports and so on, as you would expect. But, you know, the officers will do their review of each proposal against the criteria listed here. And Appendix 2 isn't in there.
Can you direct me to where the other criteria are? Sorry, page number.
They were, yeah, if you look on page 97, they start on 97, 98, 99, and finishes on 100. So those are the criteria the officers, because it's an officer working party assessing these proposals, will be looking at. So you've got delivering growth, the environment, community support, project cost, deliverability, and you can see the weightings between those. With delivering growth being given the highest weighting out of those criteria, but the stuff which was in Appendix 2, which I know there was a vexed discussion about, doesn't as such appear here. What we're looking at here is purely those items listed there. That's what any proposal will be assessed against. And it will be assessed by the officers, and the officer, you know, you can have all the, yeah, and that's what the officers will assess it by.
That does make a lot more sense, and I think, I mean, we've got a proposer and a seconder. We're happy to go forward on that basis, that we open the seal bidding round 2, but we remove Appendix 2, because if it's, yeah, well, then it doesn't need to go to Cabinet, does it, next week? So we'll just approve it with removing Appendix 2. Because I would argue, to some extent, and I don't think we need to get into it, if it's irrelevant, we may as well just remove it, because you could fill in all this criteria on 97, 98, 99 and 100. Say you came out level pegging, then presumably the priority comes into play.
Just to save confusion, I would suggest saying, and we note that Appendix 2 has appeared in the papers, would be disregarded. Yeah.
That's pretty much what I said, yeah, fine. Yeah. So, proposed, seconded, votes in favour? Okay, that's everyone. Thank you. That's that one done. So thank everybody for their help with those items. We are going to move back to our work programme. You're more than welcome to stay, but you don't have to. You can take your leave as we looked at all of the scopes already in our workshop, but thank you for your time. Right, so that, does the committee want 5 minutes just break, and then also, actually let's make it 10 minutes, have a comfort break, and then read through all the scopes quickly if you want to before we come through, and when we can quickly go through them all. So we will come back at 8:05. Thank you. Right, I make that 8:05, so welcome back everybody. So that takes us to our last item of overview and scrutiny this evening, which is our work programme and report 2025-26. So prior to this meeting, we actually held an informal workshop where we looked at all of the scopes in detail, and just a reminder that anyone can put forward a scope, and we went into more depth behind the scopes. So if someone had put forward one, they were there, so we were able to ask the chief executive, what does she mean by this? What route did she think we could go down? Similar for everyone that put in a scope. So tonight, what I'm thinking is, off the background of that workshop and the just taking it as read that everyone's read their papers, we'll go through each scope individually. We'll just go straight to the vote and think if you like that topic, if you don't like that topic, or you want to abstain. Once we've gone through them all, we'll see what we've got. We'll see how many we've got. It might be that we can do all of the ones that people like, if they're, the ones that are unanimous. If not, we'll come back and we'll refine our shortlist, and we'll just pick the one that we start with. Then after that, at a subsequent committee meeting, we can pick the one that goes next. I think we just need to have a look at the bit where it says review timescale, because they're different work programme impacts. So some are heavy, some are medium, some are light work. So it just should, it's an indicative sort of timescale, 2 or 3 months for maybe a light work. One might be 1 month, and some might be like a 6-month thing. So bear in mind, we're sort of sorting ourselves out for a year. We can't take on six-month things. So first one that I've got is from the pack, and that was, the topic was private estate maintenance and management fees. So is anyone in favour of taking this work forward? Okay, that's 4. Anyone against? And abstentions? So, okay, we've got like some undecided. So we've got 4 for that one. We'll just rank it like that, shall we? Do the 4s? Yeah. So then we've got the one which is to do with the regulation of the nightly paid temporary... Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackay, I didn't see. Oh, we're on 26 of your... We're starting in the pack first, so we're on 26 of the agenda pack, then we're going to go to the urgent updates. So we've got 4 people that think 24 would be a good idea. We're just going to add, the numbers, I think, and we'll go like that. Okay, so we're on 26, which is a topic about the regulation of the nightly paid temporary accommodation sector. So take votes who thinks that would be a good idea for us to look into. Okay, that one's out. With the third one is looking into business rate relief changes. So who thinks that would be a good one for us to look into? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on that one. 4, yep. Didn't miss anyone, did I? No, 4. And then we've got the empty properties review. So who thinks that would be a good one to look into? Got that? Got 11 on that one. And then we've got the seal charging schedule. Now this was a late entrant, but it finishes the work we were doing. So technically it's not really a new one. It's just a piece of the review that we didn't finish. So that is a light programme impact. So who thinks that one would be a good idea? No. Okay, now we're moving on to the urgent update that had the 3 scopes stapled together. So the first one of those is prevention and early intervention to manage service demands in relation to housing conditions. So who thinks that one would be a good idea for us to look into? 2, 3. I've gone on to the stapled sheet and I'm on the front one. The urgent update. The proposer was Chief Executive. It doesn't have a page number, I'm afraid. I can't. Yeah, hang on. One's coming to you right now, so you can be on the same page. There you go. Lovely. So that's prevention and early intervention to manage service demands in relation to housing conditions. Who thinks that would be a good one to have a look at? Got those. 7. And then we've got understanding the level of trust between the council and the public. Who thinks that one would be a good one to look into? And then we've got integrated neighbourhood teams, the district council perspective, and contribution focused on the NHS neighbourhood model for primary healthcare. Who thinks that one would be a good idea to look into? Oh, no, one more. 3, I think. Yeah, 3. Okay, and then I'm moving on to the piece of paper that's on its own. So it's just a single sheet, double-sided. And that is health inequality with a focus on housing. So who thinks that would be a good one to look into? 6. Okay, bear with me 2 minutes for scores on the doors.
Could I make a suggestion?
Please do.
Just about the ones pertaining to housing, could they not be merged? Having health and inequality and overarching with the other 2 scopes about integrated neighbourhood teams and early intervention to manage service demands in housing conditions.
I think that would be too
much.
huge. Yeah,
Over-ambitious.
sorry. I just don't think we would have time for that.
Okay. But they kind of said that the intervention to manage demands in housing conditions is kind of a bit similar.
They were quite different when they were explained at the workshop. So our top one was the one, I think one got 11, didn't it? Yeah. That's the empty properties. So that was the winner. So we will be doing that one. And that is the work programme impact of that is medium. That's a 3 or 4 monther. The next one was 9, and that was the SIL charging schedule, which is the quick one. That's the light impact. So that's just 1 month. So we're up to about 4 months with those. Then we've got the next one was 8, and that was the understanding the level of trust between the council and the public. So that's, go on, Councillor Field.
Just on the trust one, and I know it got a lot of support, but I'm just a bit sketchy as to what outcome we're trying to drive here. When the discussion group met, the Chief Executive spoke at some length about some concerns, broadly speaking, relating to misinformation in the public sphere and so on and so forth. I absolutely recognise that that's a problem. I'm just struggling to put my finger on what the outcome of us scrutinising that erosion of trust through misinformation in the public sphere is looking for. I just wonder if I just don't want to end up us spending months scrutinising something so that we can write a stern letter to a minister, essentially. And I wonder if anybody had any views.
Not sort of lead to sort of guidelines in terms of people in the public sector, or public life rather, where you may have we might have a schedule of things we would encourage people not to do in terms of misinformation. I don't know. Just wonder if that might be where that could lead to.
I think sometimes as well, it's just important to actually look into things that we know is a large topic and is of massive concern, and in fact sometimes is like the elephant in the room. I don't think we're necessarily prejudging the outcome. The outcome is to gain an understanding of the level of trust between public stakeholders, partners and NBC. what we could possibly do that would enhance that, and what is bringing it detrimentally down, it probably ends up in a learning outcome for us as Maidstone Borough Council. I don't necessarily see that it needs to get referred to anywhere else, really. We could take that as ourselves and own it.
Through you, Madam Chairman. I mean, at the end of the day, when we've looked at this, it's up to us what we do with it. Not just this one, but any of them. It's in terms of an outcome. The outcome will be what we determine the outcome to be when we've got the information with which to do that. Now, I think that personally, I voted for this one because I think it would be incredibly helpful in terms of getting a meaningful understanding of why the trust that used to exist between councils, councillors, and members of the public. In the area of planning, there are so many members of the public that think that decisions are made on the basis of brown envelopes. And so I just think that how we address that and can start to redress that, this would be a step in the right direction.
Councillor Oliver.
And are we going to discuss all of these ones
We're not
again,
discussing
then,
all of them, but I will just give Councillor Oliver a quick word, and then we've got 8, so that's way. I think the next one was 7 or 6, so looks like we're going for it. But Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, if you don't measure it, you can't optimise it, right? So if we haven't measured it in the past, we don't actually know what the baseline is. So it'd be good to get a baseline, and then we can optimise against that. Yeah.
Very well said. So, go on very, very quickly, Councillor Mackay.
We dismissed almost unanimously the proposal coming from John Littlemore, and I've actually had a read of it now. Now, can I say I would like to add that if we got one to a reserve list, because the way it's written, he's already got his own solution to it, and it does impact on a lot of our housing strategy, homeless and rough sleepers strategy. He wouldn't have written this unless he's got some ideas, and which we can very quickly say yay or nay to.
I think the difficulty is, if you go into them in great detail, there's bits of all of them we like to do, hence why they end up as scopes in the first place. I think there's strands and elements that is everyone's interested in, hence why we did the workshop to really start to crystallise some of those. And I think, with respect, we got 0, so if you put your 1, we're on 1, and we've got more that are higher than that. And also, this is a 1-year programme, so next year, scopes can be refined, we can look at it again. If we rattle through all of these and we finish them in less than the time scale, which I think one of them we certainly will, we can pick up more. It's not, it's not like, we have to do 3 and we're done. So I think we've got 3 now. We've got 1 that is...
Can I just so I can clarify it? Presumably John Littlemore could take this straight to Cabinet, couldn't he?
No, but there's nothing stopping an individual councillor, for example, putting a motion to council on the basis of Mr. Littlemore's suggestion, which, whilst I agree is well thought out, the likely outcome is a sternly written letter to the Minister. So our Cabinet loves writing sternly written letters to the Minister, so I'm sure we can make that happen through the council if any of us wish.
Right, I think a good way forward that I'm going to propose from the chair is that we've got 3 that were far and away the winners, with 11, 9 and 8. They're a top 3. They don't take up a year, so I think we should just get going on those. We should get going on the empty properties review, number 1, the still charging schedule, number 2, and then we move on to the trust one, and we'll see how long that takes, because that could snowball or, in fact, be a lot quicker. And then we can do this exercise again, and in the meantime, some of these scopes can be refined again, and we can look at them again in perhaps the 6, 7, 8 month period, and pick one final one for the rest of our year. Councillor Keeley.
Sorry, just really quickly. For example, that health equality one, that was something that was mentioned last time but didn't come to fruition, because can that give it, it's obviously something that's bubbling along, but other things are taking higher, which is, you know, I completely get that, it's democratic, but it is something that's been a long held one for several people. If that can just be kept on the back burner as well, please.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. Like, we'll keep all of these others. We'll start with those, and then we can relook at the others. And if anyone wants another scope that they want to refine or build in, we can look at that in 8 months' time. But for now, we might as well just get going and see where we get to. Is that agreed as a way forward? Start with 3. Councillor Harper?
Unfortunately, I was away when you were doing the workshop. I wasn't. Are we going to do these exercises at the committee, or are we going to use workshops, or are we going to do a mixture of both?
You've jumped to my next question, which I was coming to. So if we can agree that we start with these 3, that's my proposal. Have I got and keep all of the others in reserve to look at a later date, because the rest of the scores and everything were fairly similar, so I don't want to pick from those. Is that seconded as a way forward? We look at these 3. Okay, so votes in favour? Okay, we're going to start on that. My next question is, with the first one that we're starting on, the empty properties review, it's been suggested that it probably would be easier to do the review via committee meetings. So I'm proposing that we go ahead with that. That's what the officers recommended. So have I got a seconder for going forward on that basis for this one? Councillor Mackay. You go through your microphone, but I have got Councillor Mackay first. Let's not just all go into waffle. Right, Councillor Mackay first.
I was going to agree with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, Councillor Cook, it's 3 or 4 months, so it'd probably be 3 or 4 meetings for this one.
So it would be part of, we would dedicate a part of each of those monthly meetings to this.
Yeah, like we did with the planning enforcement review, we did that through committee. That was the second one we did. So, starting with the empty properties review, doing it in committee, 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 meetings about this topic, with the officer that proposed it helping us through. Votes in favour? Great, we'll get going. Oh, sorry, votes against? Abstentions? Right. Okay, so we'll get going with this one, and then we'll come back and revisit at a later date. That brings us to the end of all the items on this evening's agenda. Well, I've got exciting new advice. We can actually double up. If we're doing this one as a committee, we could very excitingly pick up the third option, which is the trust one, because that's been recommended doing that as a working group. We could get that one going as well at the same time. Councillor Parfitt.
I'd just like to make a suggestion. If we are going to do a working group, please could it be that all members of the committee are invited? Because the first workshop we did was just one person, and I felt completely excluded from it and disengaged from it, I'll be honest. I know not everybody will be able to make it. I might not be able to make every, you know, the chances of all 11 of us being able to make the workshop is unlikely, but if there are several, then we might all get a chance to have some input into it. So
Councillor Harper.
Yeah, I think well, my preference is to do these things in workshops. But if we do, I'm wondering whether, because the last time we did it, the SEAL one was in all daytime workshops, whether it would be better to do a mixed, either do them all evening or a mixture of daytime and evening, in which so the maximum number of people can get involved, because obviously I'm cognizant that some people work during the daytime, others don't. Whereas if we do them in daytime, people who've got full-time jobs are pretty well excluded. Whereas if we do a mixture of daytime and evening, at least people have got a chance. If they can't get to every one of the sessions, they can get to a number of them, and vice versa for people who, can do daytime rather than evening.
I think particularly for this one, if we're doing the understanding, the level of trust, it's important we get as many people involved as possible, isn't it? So I think happy to go forward on that basis that we do a working group, everyone's invited of this committee, and we do a mixture of daytime and evenings so that hopefully we'll get a really good attendance to those workshops as they go along. Is that agreed? Lovely. So we can start 2 at once, and then it probably will be in a position to do 1 or 2, at least 2 more as well. So thank you. On that basis, I declare this meeting closed. Thank you so much. Oh, have we got one more? No, we did that because we switched the order. Don't scare me like that. We're done. Yeah. Thank you. The meeting's closed.